Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
It goes Rich Gear here as well, and I really, it was a short but sweet chapter in your newest book that Doug's come out. You want to show them that? That's
don't let your geology mess up your theology. This is a little bit about chapter 3 in this book.
Yes, and and as you said for the show, that's a little bit more of an esoteric type of a chapter, but it's really, I think, quite profound. It's a short and sweet chapter, actually, Doug. So, without any further ado, let's get into it,
God takes what was destructive in nature and turned it into amazing beauty. And if you take a look at the Grand Canyon or the Na Pali coast where we were in Hawaii, or a lot of these different places which is just stunning geology and also the beauty of it. It's pretty amazing, and you as an artist maybe can explain a little bit more of this than I can, because it is a quality that is persuasive that there is a God, and yet the question is why.
This is the thing that over the years I've thought about this subject quite a bit, and beauty and other abstract qualities which all humankind is receptive to. We all know about things like love and beauty, and you mentioned faith, and what are some of the other ones? They're joy. They're things that we have, and you can explain certain things by externals or outside or materialistic, but not the intrinsic nature of what, let's say, in beauty, what beauty really is. And what I've always put it to the point where I've always amazed, and you just kind of alluded to it. Out of tragedy, God shows his redemptive love despite that. And we resonate with that. It's like there's a tuning fork, and we see that and we say, this is amazing. Mm-hmm. This is gorgeous. Can I just sit here and rest and take it in? Those kinds of thoughts. We said something theologically, the worst thing that could have happened in history, they killed God. Mm-hmm. But out of it comes the redemption of mankind. So out of tragedy, beauty comes. We talk about in geology, the horribleness of what happened during the Great Flood. Yet out of it, we see things like Grand Canyon and the Na Pali, all these wonderful geologic formations, and you look at them and you go, "Wow, this is a handiwork of God." But as John Moore said years ago, this is a monument to catastrophe.
It is, yeah.
But nevertheless, it is a monument, and it shows that even out of tragedy and disruption and chaos and judgment, there comes redemption and life and purpose and beauty.
And so a question I might ask is that why are we so fascinated with going to places like Arches National Park?
I know.
Because a lot of the things there are just erosion to its maximum.
Right.
And it's something there where it shows that through that erosion, all these arches and
wonderful formations,
balanced rocks were sculpted.
Or Bryce Canyon.
Bryce Canyon, definitely.
Whoa! You look at that and you say it looks like miniature, or gigantic castles and stuff. And and it's so many. You and I have said this. It's like we go to the West, and there's almost so much eye candy. You get jaded to it a little bit because there's just so much of it. It's beautiful, and you look at it, but it's like, Doug, a piece of artistry. Let's say I do a painting, do an oil painting or watercolor, or whatever. And people recognize there's something inside of that. I've actually asked people. I only had one person that kind of contradicted me on this one, but I said, most people, if you have a choice between a photographic portrait and a hand-painted portrait, know that the skill level is going to be high in each one of them. It's going to be accurate. It's going to be who you are. Almost everyone I know, only one person, he was colorblind. Okay, he really didn't have much of an artistic sense at all. He was an IT kind of guy. Nothing against IT guys, but he had no artistic sense hardly at all. And but everyone else says, no, I'd rather have a hand painted portrait, because there's a humanity that you breathe into it, and you see beauty out of this, and you recognize that, and you go, but it's just a picture of a face. But we recognize, even in humanity, Doug, people are made in the image of God. Mm-hmm. And you say, Well, that ugly guy? It has nothing to do with the external there. It's something inside that was been created in his very image. Well, we find that, Doug, in the physical world around us. Everything in the physical world manifests as beauty, despite the fact that it's gone through a fall, a corruption, a catastrophe, a judgment. Nevertheless, through all of that stuff, God's handiwork shines through if you're willing to open your eyes to see it.
I think one of the things that happens is that when your senses are overwhelmed, that's when you're experiencing beauty.
Okay.
It's something where you're getting all these sensory triggers going on in your brain.
Yep.
And you just sort of wonder, well, what is this all about? It sort of makes you ponder a little bit of the meaning of life and its existence. And you go to a sunset, and the sunset will exhibit all these different colors of orange and blue and
Purples and
grays.
yellows. Yep.
And so all that combined together brings about a sense of beauty. And yet, how do you quantify that? How do you measure it scientifically?
Can't put it in a test tube, can't weigh it on a scale, can't measure with a yardstick, but we intrinsically know there's such a thing as beauty.
It's something that escapes the whole scientific paradigm.
Right. In other words, we talk about Grand Canyon. You talk about the rock layers and the strata and how this could be laid down by a flood, and all we can measure, all that kind of stuff. But sometimes you just want to go there and just be taken in awe how the spectacle of this thing, how huge this thing is. Mm-hmm. It is beautiful. The colors are also beautiful as well. There are a lot of wonderful colors, especially when you get the greens, against the reddish rocks and stuff. It's gorgeous, But sometimes I like, even when you go in, I'll go out. We've gone out in like early April or middle April, and there's like snow on the ridge. You just see a craggly old dead tree. There's nothing. Why do people like old barns and dead trees to paint?
I know.
Think about that. But there's something about that it resonates. Part of it might be the idea that we're either touching humanity or touching divinity, and those two things, because humanity is part of divinity. Mm-hmm. He's made us in His image, but those things resonate like old barns. A human being has had a presence there. Well, the Grand Canyon, there was God created this whole place, and he sets it up. When you look at it, you just in wonder, you say, how could this be? How could this be? We haven't even got out to the universe or anything. All the precision, all the mathematical stuff there's a beauty in that as well. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you just sit back and you go, visually, inside of me, I'm moved by what I'm seeing. Or even, how about, Doug, you love music.
That's right, yeah.
There's beautiful music. Why does some of this really come out? And what's so strange, Doug, in our I call it the postmodern world, we seem to be, and I don't say this, we seem to be hell bent on trying to dissuade ourselves from those things. We try to push that away. Our art and our music. I still remember like the one, it was a John Cage or somebody who was in, but they would do this music. He put like blocks of wood on. Just there's no finesse. There's no it's a cacophony of sound. In art, and I obviously had to talk more with the visual arts. We spent 200 years or 150 years trying to reject the beauty of a landscape or a wonderfulness of a portrait or the idea of a flower, and we've gone in all these abstract things trying to divorce ourselves from the divinity, the godliness that is out there. We don't want to be and I think, what I mean, Doug? That's just a thought that just occurred to me. It reminds me of what Adam and Eve, God created him to be the sons and daughters of God, to be godlike. What does the New Testament say? He came to basically make us sons and daughters of the living God. He created us in His image. Yet, what the first thing they do, they try to want to become God without God, and that's what a lot of this art has done. They want to create without acknowledging the Creator. And to me, all great things that you see, you recognize as beautiful. Some are better than others, of course, because of the skill level of the artist, whatever. But you recognize there's something divine in something that's created, but not divorced from the creator.
What I don't necessarily like is where artists try to show that their art is actually an expression of randomness, where they throw paint on the canvas. And,
oh, you're not a big Jackson Pollock fan. Okay.
No.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's a funny thing, Jackson Pollock was an art student of Thomas Hart Benton, who I really kind of liked a lot. In fact, one of his paintings, Thomas Hart Benton, he was actually, Pollock was painted. He had painted a portrait of him in one of his paintings. Mm-hmm. But Thomas Hart Benton he was a modernist, very modern type of sensibility, but his paintings are very profound and very powerful. But Pollock, was trying to get away from that. But you never do. Mm-hmm. I tell people, even the most abstract of art, oftentimes you can see representational images in there. Exactly. Think about it this way. When you're a little kid, look up in the sky. What do you see in the cloud formation? And I love the Peanuts cartoon. He's seeing all this wonderful, it's a tapestry of this, and Charlie Brown goes, "Oh, I thought I just saw a ducky." but there's that, and how do you see things? What do we see things in cliff faces? We anthropomorphize a lot of things. We'll see faces of Indians or of famous people or something, or animals. We see them because it's our nature. We want to get back to what the Creator has made, even now in its fallen state. Right. We still desire that. And the more we try to divorce ourselves from, try to separate it, we're trying to make ourselves God apart from God, and we fail. We fail over and over and over again. It'll get to be the hot button issue, or not issue, but artwork for a while, but suddenly it just goes bankrupt. It just goes bankrupt. And we go back to, where do we go to? Those Renaissance, which a lot of it there was pagan influences, but there was a sense of the divine, and the Baroque period, and all these, and your landscapes and the heavenly vistas and stuff. And I still remember one time I read about it, Courbet, I think was the artist, 1840s or something like that, and he says, and they said, "Why don't you paint those wonderful angels and stuff?" Well, when I see an angel, I'll paint one. Mm-hmm. They were already divorcing themselves from this. They were beginning to consider this as more of a fantasy level or lane that they couldn't get into. But the thing was, the people who were painting those things, unfortunately, were trivializing them. They weren't doing the majestic things that they did earlier on. You had things like the romantic, which people love romantic art, right? But they deified pantheism. It was a big landscapes, and people were really little, really small. That was one of the things about it. So there were, over this time, mankind in his rebellion has always tried to get rid of it, and yet we still come back as God is the author of beauty. God is the author of love. God is the author of all the things that we consider abstract and esoteric, but are nonetheless real and powerful in humanity's existence.
Yeah, I remember going to Massachusetts, and there's a place in Rockford, Massachusetts, called Bearskin Neck. It's a little promontory where you go out. It's where all the ships come in, and there's a lobster shack sitting out in the middle of the bay. It's red, and they call it motif number 1 because it's probably one of the most photographed, picturesque spots in the area. And I really wonder, why that is, why that is so captivating, because it has all this this interest to it. The red shack that is contrasted with the blue waters and
But see, there you have it. I think this is what you have. That, to me, oftentimes what makes beautiful things happen, why like the old barn or whatever, is because you've got humanity touching divinity with the blue waters and the sky and the nature and what the Lord has made. And I think the Lord rejoices in that. I think God really loves creativity, not for idolatry purposes, but to recognize. Think about Johann Sebastian Bach. When he wrote his music, what he would always say, and some people think, "Oh, that's a little pretentious," but he was sincere. To the glory of God. He always write that in his pieces. And to me, when artists recognize the glory of God in what they do, true beauty can come out in a human's work. Other than that, I default to God's creation.
Right.
That is, even in its broken state, it's more beautiful than anything that I could ever do.
Yeah.
My paintings are flat. God is three-dimensional.
Yeah, this picture here of the cabin in the Yukon
Oh, yeah.
is sort of like that. This is actually a little shed. It's maybe about this tall, but it looks with the mountains in the background and everything. It just has that motif number one type of picturesque beauty. And
But beauty, Doug, how do you define beauty? And people say, there's the old expression, beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
right.
But God has given each one of us a perspective on beauty, and there are, granted, I think it's amazing the variety of things out there that some people wouldn't consider necessarily beautiful, others would really, it's like music. Some people like this kind of music, some people like this kind of music.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems to be, and the opposite side of the thing, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but it's like the guy years ago when they talked about pornographic stuff. Well, I can't really define it, but I know what it is when I see it. Mm-hmm. Beauty is like that in the good sense of it. You don't know it, you can define it, but words kind of, they fall short of the sublime reality that we experience when we come across true beauty.
Now, what I see is that beauty is actually divinity revealed in some ways. You can have the ugliest puss looking at you, but if he breaks out in a smile, it grins from
so
ear to ear.
Cute, huh?
It becomes beautiful because it reveals what's actually on the inside of that person.
Yeah.
And so the beauty that we see out in nature, there's a lot of stuff that you have all the dead wood in the forest,
right?
But in the spring it comes to life, and all that actually is very pleasing to the eye, and I think that's the way God made us. He can take what is broken and assemble it into something that is beautiful and it jolts our senses.
Right, and as I said, when people try to quantify things, all these abstract things, like Doug, we might want to, if you want to talk about faith, for instance, or love, or joy. And I've seen scientists say, well, we can measure that just based on neurons or something. And that's probably not even a word, moronical. But anyway, neurons, triggering. But why do they trigger?
That's right. Yeah.
What causes these things to happen at all? There are things it's like you might try to measure why why certain things taste the way they do, or certain things, and I realize there are people in this broken world that are colorblind and they're tone deaf. But most of us, the Lord has allowed us to experience those things. And I think that those things allow us to touch divinity, as you said, Doug, in a small way. I think C.S. Lewis had he said, heaven is going to be so much more intense in every way that our physical bodies could not contain it. But he lets us have glimpses. And I think faith is another one of those abstract things that we believe in something we may not have seen, and the Lord allows us to see some things from time to time to kind of jumpstart, to believe in that, to believe in something you haven't seen. Some people call that crazy, and yet our life is richer because we have faith. It's not richer when you have no faith in anything. Your life is bankrupt. You may be pursuing all kinds of things, but so what? What does it matter? Or are you really? If we substitute, I've heard this before, happiness for joy. Joy is inside, and it fills you up despite your external circumstances. Happiness is externally driven. There's nothing wrong with happiness in as far as it is, but it's not the same as joy. Joy is something that God gives, and peace. You're a fairly peaceable guy, Doug. I have to admit, I have to work on that because I'm a little more hyperactive and I get off on the thing. But you're a peaceable kind of a guy. That to me is something I really, when I obtain those things, that's an abstract quality, Doug, that you can't quantify or measure. And yet it's real. It's real.
And I think that if you come from a perspective where you don't have faith, you see more of the ugliness in the world than you see the beauty. you miss the beauty that is all around us.
Yeah.
And I also, if you take a look at music, sometimes you have some discords in the music,
Yes.
and the discords can be beautiful as long as they're resolved.
Yeah.
Because you'll often find you'll have a major seventh chord or even a jazz chord where you have a lot of different discordant notes.
Right.
But then the chord that follows it is usually one that resolves it and makes it back to the bass C chord of the
Yeah, if
whole.
it doesn't resolve, you're kind of uneasy.
Yeah, it leaves you a little bit
Uneasy and queasy.
but sometimes that's kind of cool too. There's beauty in all of that if you look for it.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. Is that the atheist looks for a world that's without God.
Right, and they try to find fulfillment in temporal, always at the end unsatisfactory things. They don't fill you with that contentment, that peace, that faith that builds you and realizes, hey, everything I do now has meaning. Where the unbeliever, the atheist, pretty much nothing has ultimate meaning. It really doesn't. Basically, from a pragmatic stance, you tell somebody, well, 85 years you're worm food. So what is it? What did that matter that you did all this? Who cares? When you're in the middle of it, it all matters because I made in the image of God. I think God takes great joy, Doug, in every little accomplishment we can do. Every time we can appreciate the things He's made, and we can discover some of the things He's made. I think He takes great joy in that. When I can imitate God by painting a picture, or you can do it by an experiment or a program or writing a book. I think God enjoys it. I think when we discover it, unfortunately, unbelievers discover it, so they don't find any meaning. But when you find the secrets of DNA, like Watson and Crick, but they're atheists. What joy do they really have? I mean, this is the code. I think God takes great joy in us discovering things that He made that He's kind of hidden out, kind of like little pieces of puzzles, that we could, like the hidden picture. Wow. And that's great. You found that. Good. Okay, now on the next thing. So all of those things, I think, Doug, wrap themselves up in the idea of what is beauty. We've kind of danced around it a little bit because we've acknowledged fully you can't define it fully. I know there are dictionary definitions, but it is an esoteric value.
Right, you can't measure it in your column chromatography or infrared spectrophotometer.
Nope.
And taking the beaker full of chemicals, you shake it up and then measure it with a scientific test that is repeatable and so there are a lot of things that are like that. You just have to take things on faith because there is really no ultimate explanation. Now, the scientific method, you start out with a hypothesis or something that you're trying to investigate and find the truth is, and then you develop tests to
substantiate it
and see if it's true. Well, you also have to, and then if you find that it the results doesn't match what you expected, well, then you have to go back and either revise your postulate or see if your experiment was done right. And then there's also once you even if you get the results you expect, you have to go back and ask the question, well, suppose there is another explanation for why you get these same results.
Well, I think that's what a lot of atheistic and evolutionary people are trying to do. They're trying to give you materialistic answers for a non-material reality. In other words, beauty, faith, joy, love, these kinds of things are abstract, and they're trying to quantify it with, like I say, with how many electric impulses go to the brain here. It doesn't. All they're doing is basically they may be acknowledging this is happening, but they're not really explaining why it happens. They can't do that. But God, see, that's the thing with the biblical text, with the biblical thing. We start out with axioms. There's certain things that are true, and once you start from that point, and what is the God in the beginning? God created. Okay. We accept that as a truism, as a truth. We can't prove that any more than you could prove the Big Bang could do it. We think that external things make it a little bit more reasonable, but that aside, by putting labels on things doesn't explain why they are. Right. And that happens a lot, I think, in the scientific community. And I think sometimes that's
what give them big names. And
that doesn't, and it's fine as far as it goes, but it gives you the illusion that they've explained something about the creation without the creator, and that's not happening. It really is not. Okay.
Yeah. And that's sort of the thing about beauty is, you just find it very difficult to measure it, but you know it when you see it. Yeah,
well, that was the point of the early statement. I really like that, Doug. I mean, this chapter in this book is a very short chapter, and but it's just to talk about those things which we accept as true axioms: beauty, love, faith, joy. These are real things, but they're not measurable. They're not. You can't utilize them by the scientific method.
And then
that shows the divinity. I'm sorry, Doug. I didn't mean to cut you off there. Go ahead.
There's truth, and trying to determine what truth is without the manual that we have, the Bible, which is the truth. And if you don't have a standard to go by, then it's just a majority of opinion that determines.
It's consensus reality,
and that's what is, and it's basically on feelings, not on scientific fact or any.
Ultimately, yes, yeah.
And if you don't have an objective standard of what truth is, you can't really arrive at any kind of science.
But you also can't really accept what is true without being able to quantify it, like beauty. You can. We can accept that that's a reality. I mean, everyone really does anyway, even whether an atheist or a believer. But they don't really understand why it is. I mean, the thing is, because there is a God who's the author of all life, all beauty, all truth. And he is the one that makes all these other things, these wonderful things that we do in the material world, even after judgment, become a reality. And that's what I think is amazing.
And Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man can come to the Father but by me. And in him is all beauty and all truth. And we hope you enjoyed our time on Revolution Against Evolution. We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.